Let's begin with a shared frustration. Many intelligent, sincere people have rejected religion not because they lack moral depth or existential curiosity, but because they cannot, in good conscience, accept supernatural explanations. They look at the myths, the rituals, the personified deities, and they see fiction where they're told to see truth. They see authority structures demanding obedience to invisible beings, and they walk away, often with good reason. But in walking away from religion, many also walk away from something else, something deeper, buried beneath the symbols, the laws, and the names of gods. They walk away from the insight that those ancient systems were never meant to describe arbitrary divine will, but necessary patterns of reality. Beneath every commandment, every god, every sacred text, there is something far more powerful, a structure that is not imposed by belief, but discovered through experience, a structure we can verify, not by faith, but by observation. That structure is the real covenant. The word covenant has baggage. It conjures up images of God making deals with prophets, of chosen people, and divine punishment. But strip away the cultural layers, and what is a covenant? It is a description of how things work, not just morally, but ontologically. It's not a contract between a deity and a tribe. It's a recognition of how life functions, of what sustains harmony, what cultivates resilience, and what inevitably breaks down when misaligned. Ancient Sumerians, some of the earliest literate humans, articulated this through what they called me, domains of patterned reality. Kingship had its me, so did truth, music, fertility, and warfare. These weren't commandments handed down from the sky. They were the recognition of how each aspect of existence maintains balance. The Sumerians didn't worship arbitrary personalities. They personified forces because it made the patterns relatable. But beneath Inanna or Enki or Enlil were relational dynamics. They were teaching a physics of civilization without differential equations. And the same is true of the Torah. Its covenant wasn't about a deity testing obedience. It was an encoded articulation of how to live in alignment with reality's structure. That's why the laws of agriculture, social ethics, diet, ritual, time, all exist side by side. Because the Torah is not primarily a rulebook. It is a map of alignment, a symbolic system for navigating life by attuning to patterns that already exist. So what is this pattern? What is the covenant, stripped of myth, stripped of theology? It begins with a triad. At the root of all things, there is a structure so simple it hides in plain sight. First, there is logos, not word in the linguistic sense, but structured intelligibility, the possibility of form, the abstract relational matrix that gives reality its coherent shape. Second, there is energy, often represented symbolically as light, potential, movement, differentiation. This is what the logos organizes. Third, there is life, or more precisely, balance-seeking integration. Life is what happens when energy flows through structure in a way that sustains and adapts. Logos structures energy into life. That's the covenant. Not a moral command, not a religious choice, but a description. When you live aligned with this structure, when your thoughts, actions, and relationships reflect intelligible form, channeling energy toward connection and adaptive balance, what emerges is life. Not just biological life, but relational life, psychological life, civilization. And when you violate the structure, not through sin, but through incoherence, when you act against pattern, when energy becomes chaos, when connection is broken or corrupted, the result is disintegration. Entropy, suffering. That's not punishment. That's physics. The ancient languages didn't have our terms for systems theory, information flow, or recursive coherence. So they spoke in myth, they spoke of gods. But what they were really trying to tell us, often hidden, sometimes cryptic, was this. There are patterns that sustain existence. They operate whether we believe in them or not. They are the foundation of what some call divine law. But they are as impersonal and real as gravity. The Sumerians encoded this through narrative. The Hebrews coded it in law. But both saw the same truth, that harmony is not the result of arbitrary obedience, but of alignment with what simply is. The covenant is not a decree, it's a mirror. And here's the good news. You don't need to believe in a supernatural being to live in alignment with it. You only need to recognize the patterns, to see how justice, generosity, rhythm, restraint, and renewal all cohere across levels of reality. To see that those who live by truth tend to build what lasts, that empathy is not just morally noble but structurally necessary. That balance isn't moderation for its own sake, it's what keeps energy flowing without collapse. So, If you're someone who finds truth in reason, meaning in science, and inspiration in complexity, then the covenant is already yours. Not because you inherited it or because a prophet told you so, but because it is written into the fabric of things. The task is to read the pattern and live accordingly. That's the real covenant. One no one made because no one needed to. It was already there, waiting to be recognized.